Today on our show, we journey to the promised galaxy, where healthy human relationships are valued more highly than technological advances corrupted by an excess of science and a total lack of consciousness. It's panelism! Welcome to Panelism, a podcast where we talk about the comics and graphic novels worth having on your shelf. I'm Taylor Trask.
I'm Todd A.
And Todd, it is episode 101. We're in the new era. The new vibe. We've got a new theme song, as you heard on episode 100. We've got kind of not a new way of doing it, but it feels fresh for some reason.
Yeah, no, because it is fresh. It's totally fresh.
Totally fresh.
Not the same show we've been doing for 3 years.
This is the all new, all different panelism. How about that?
All new. In fact, number 100 took so much out of us that we were unable to schedule another episode last week. So
that's true.
We're coming to this totally fresh. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, welcome everybody listening. We know we have a lot of fans on Instagram who found the show. So if you're one of those folks, thank you so much. If you are a longtime listener or you came across us by happenstance, by chance, thank you so much as well. We love all our listeners. In the last month or two, we've grown quite a bit. So thanks to all the new folks who found us, and we hope that you keep us on your podcast feed for the foreseeable future. And today is a book that I'm going to be talking about called The Technopriests.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me about this.
Yeah, I did. It has been a little while since I've referenced Jodorowsky. And to be honest, the reason I'm doing The Technopriests is we've been doing this show for 3 years, and I have not once reviewed a Jodorowsky book other than, I've done some humanoid stuff, but I haven't done a Jodorowsky book. And, I've got to do the Inkle. I've got to do the Metabarons. I've got to do a bunch of stuff. So we're going to get to those later in the year. But the book / series that I thought would be a really good one to start off on is The Technopriests. And so it's written by Alejandro Jodorowsky, who, if you've ever listened to the show, is like one of my sort of spirit animal guru, favorite guys to reference in all things. And if you haven't, go ahead.
Like you said, it's been a while since I've referenced him, and I thought, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
The last episode came out, because I'm sure he came up in our greatest stuff,
If you've never seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, oh my God, stop listening to us, go watch that, then come back and listen to this episode. It is so damn good. I've referenced it many times. But The Technopriests, he wrote it. The artist is I'm going to butcher this name, Zoran Janetov, Janjetov, Janetov, and then colorist Fred Beltran. And I really want to stress that colorist name in this episode, because this is a book that you need all three of those guys to make this book. You need Jodorowsky's characters in mind and just its story. You need the art of Zoran, and then you need the color is so specific and so heightened and so very surreal that this book would not be what it was without Fred Beltran. So I really want to give him a shout out. It is a book. It's a book, but it's a series spread out over 8 volumes. And so if you read them, they feel and function a lot like chapters. I don't think it was a series. I think it may have been a series released as issues, but it's meant to be a collected sort of, mini series, a start and a stop. They haven't made any more since. And I'll read.
And it looks like there's a pretty long publication date.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you say that, because the consistency is pretty great. Everything's drawn very well. Looks really good. You don't notice that it was started and stopped. Some of the Moebius stuff, which we'll review on a later episode too. You can tell the art gets a little better as it goes. This is not the case. Everything looks very consistent from start to finish. The story is very consistent from start to finish. This is published by Humanoids, by the way, in the U.S. and then some other publishers around the world. I think the Humanoids mostly does it globally, but anytime you get any of these really cool international titles, it's usually humanoids, usually. So keep an eye out for them as a publisher. I'm going to read the back of the book summary, because this is a really kind of complicated book to talk about. So I'm going to try to keep the review short, but let's start with the back of the book. The cosmic adventures of a young boy on his path to ridding the galaxy of an insidious technological plague. After the Greek tragedy of the Metabarons, Alejandro Jodorowsky comes back to his biblical roots with this quest reminiscent of Moses and set on a galactic scale. To top it off, the characters and the theme of virtual reality are tailor-made for artist Zoran Jantov, who also illustrated Before the Inkle, if you've ever read that, who finds in Jodorowsky his perfect match. Albino, hero of the Space Odyssey, remembers here his childhood, his apprenticeship, and the big and small battles he had to fight to fulfill his ambitions in a universe where technological advances are paradoxically matched only by the cruelty and the barbarism of the forces controlling it. Kind of a mouthful. We'll get into that in a second. I want to throw this out there. If you like the Inko, the Metabarons, which are both Jodorowsky books, and coincidentally both in the same universe as the Technopriests, so the Jodoverse, as it were. This book fits right in there. So the Inko, Metabarons, it all takes place in the same thing. And I'm going to throw out there Game of Thrones. If you are a GOT fan, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you will. I think you'll really like the sort of there's a lot of politics, a lot of manipulation, a lot of family dichotomy and betrayal and changes of allegiances and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of backstabbing and scheming and a lot of that too. So I really did kind of, it felt as epic and as sort of as rich as Game of Thrones.
Wow. So I have not read any Jodorowsky, but I would have actually thought that, just given descriptions and stuff, that a lot of his stuff is like very arch and very like concerned with large ideas and not so much with the like human drama.
This is definitely a mix of both. There are very high level ideas in this, but there's also a very intimate family story. It starts off with this high priestess of kind of like the citadel, almost like, the Greek tragedy sort of comparison here. I mean, I know they use the Greek tragedy for the Metabarons too, but it's kind of a lot of Greek mythology is kind of baked into this too. Imagine like, the Oracle of Delphi, or, like a young Vestal virgin who's at the Oracle, and, her virginity gives her power, her enlightenment right away. Early chapter, or early pages, three pirates basically invade and attack the Oracle. They rob it because it's built of gold and it's pretty rich. So they completely pillage it, and all three rape this high priestess. And there's a red pirate, a white pirate, and a black pirate. Like physically, their skin and their costume are red, white, and black. And so they all three rape her. And she bears three children, all from one of those three pirates. So her first son is sort of a hybrid. He's from the black pirate. Her middle child is from the white pirate. He's our main character, Albino. It's spelled Albino, and the temptation is to pronounce it albino, but I think albino just sounds better in the context of the story, so I'll keep saying that. So Albino's our main character, and then there's a third younger girl who's from the red pirate. She's got 4 arms because the red pirate had 4 arms, so it's she's more alien than the other two. And
so when you say the first child was a hybrid, it's because the pirates are not earthly, or she's
they're all aliens. Nothing. Earth is not represented at all in the story.
Oh, okay.
She's
complete. So it's literally a hybrid, like between species. It's not a
And Panafa is the high priestess's name. I don't know. It's not quite clear. She's she looks like a normal Earth human, but it's never said what her origin is. But the other two kids, that's Albino's our main character. He's the white. He's an albino. So hence the name, but I pronounce it albino. The other one is Almagro is the older brother, and then Onyx is the youngest sister. Okay. And she's the least. They kind of go in order. So like Almagro is like sort of the he's mama's little boy. He's coddled. He's everything everything that happens is for him. Albino's kind of he's sort of an afterthought. basically sits in his room and plays games all day long. And then Onyx is sort of like, she's literally just a bastard stepchild. She's, she's forced to be the servant and all this kind of stuff. And so Panopha, the high priestess, after all this happens, she stays at the low, sort of this asteroid where the oracle was, or where the temple was, and she rebuilds it around these sort of like space ox who can create this like amazing milk that's, really, really valuable. So she kind of rebuilds over the course of 15 years, rebuilds like this really profitable enterprise and becomes very important. And all she wants to do is raise enough money to build a warship to go after these 3 pirates and kill them. She's like, I'm not going to rest until I have had my vengeance. Okay. So that's kind of her main story. And she and Albino, the main character, he's only with her for very few pages. He wants to play and build games. And this is a sort of a future in the universe where very high definition virtual reality, fully immersive VR games are sort of the coin of the land. That's how most entertainment happens, how most news, there's really not books or anything anymore. It's all these games. These games are sort of what control the entire economy. It's what everybody just does. And so he wants to build games. He's very, very optimistic, very, what's the word? What's hopeful, youth. I can't think of it. But he's very, idealistic. There we go. He has these very idealistic sort of thoughts of what this world is. The games are controlled by this sort of like governing group called the Technopriests, hence the title. So he right away, his mother sends him off to sort of like this boarding school for game makers. And he begins his journey. So right away, the story splits off into his journey and his mother/brother/sister's journey. And it's all kind of told from the future Albino. He's kind of an wizened old man, and he's flying. You get a sense early on, they explain what it is, but he's flying this ship of all these like young techno priests who he's assembled, and he's flying them to almost like a kind of like a Shangri-La, like a new universe where they can have a new impact. In fact, there's this line that he repeats constantly in every book, and it kind of becomes a joke almost because he says it so often. But the joke is like, I'm leading these people to the promised galaxy where society is based on healthy human relationships and valued more highly than technological advances, corrupted by an excess of science and a total lack of consciousness. Like that sounds
so much like we're making the world a better place by
like
everything from Silicon Valley.
Oh, dude, it's the whole main kind of theme through this whole thing is science and technology has corrupted the entire galaxy to its core, and normal, healthy human relationships and nature and a Taoist kind of mindset is completely thought of as evil and foreign. And Albino, like, he's a very sensitive, artist. That's what he wants. So he's leading these new techno priests, and you learn more of that story as it goes. I'll come back to that in a second. But he's all the, his past and his mother's past is told from him creating an archive. And he's got like a little sort of space mouse sort of sidekick that like he talks to, named Teeny Griffey or Tiny Griffey. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's this like little kind of mascot that sits on his shoulder, and he's telling the story to, and he's recording it. And then in the past, that same little, Teeny Griffey's with him too. So as he's going through this sort of initiation, this schooling to ultimately become a techno priest, that little creature's with him. And every chapter of the eight volumes, every chapter, it's all about Albino going to, first he goes to kind of like the boarding school, and he ends up being recognized as a genius game maker. He's one of the brightest students they've ever had. So he gets taken to like the next, like the next level, like the college level, where he goes to become a game maker. And then from there, he goes to become a techno priest. From there, he goes to become like, he rises further and further in the echelon, ultimately becoming the Pope of the techno priests. And that's sort of where we find him at the end, and narrating his past. Every step of the way, he learns that all these things that he thought were true, that like, game makers have this great time, they can influence young minds and build these beautiful worlds and blah, blah, blah. He realizes that every step of the way, his heart just breaks because it's like, it's all corrupt. It's all, it's all about bringing out the worst in humanity, about, celebrating greed and just and creating mental traps for humans so that they just spend more and that they don't think for themselves. And every single volume is him just confronting this in a more severe, extreme way. And he's just constant. And like, it's like, every chapter ends with him, in a spaceship going to another place, because he's graduated to that next level. And it's like, I thought this last one was bad, but what was coming was way worse. And that's like the end of that, end of his story for that volume. So then you come into the next volume going, oh God, what's he going to experience now? And it's always much, much worse.
Are those chapters like chronological, or is it sort of jumping all over time and
no.
Space?
It is very chronological. It's very similar to Game of Thrones season 1, where there's Jon's journey, Daenerys' journey, and then Ned Stark. So it just kind of cuts back and forth between Albino's journey and then his mother's / siblings journey. And it cuts back and forth because once he leaves his mother, they don't see each other again until the end of the series. And so it's about them kind of, because their journey mirrors his own in some ways. Everything he's going through that's just terrible and awful. He always, as he's recounting this to his little friend, he usually says, but my mother, she was going through way worse. And so it cuts back to her and you get to see everything that goes on. So Albino's journey is to become a game maker, ultimately become a technopriest. And his sort of destiny is to rise to the highest level so that he can tear the entire system down. And of course, the system fights like hell to prevent him from doing that. He has to compromise a lot. He has to, he meets some very important figures who help him on his journey. They give him the strength and the insight to do this. It's not all on his shoulders, but he's constantly having to he has to murder people at one point just so he can get to that next level so that he can finally tear this all down. Cause he's like, if I don't, no one's gonna this is going to go on forever. And I have got to stop it. And so, he feels the weight of just everything he has to compromise on, all his ideals he has to put aside from time to time to do this. It's a really, this part of the story is very Jodorowsky because it speaks to Jodorowsky as a filmmaker, as a creator, is constantly at odds against the corporate culture of art, right? He doesn't understand why he can't make a 20-hour movie, about Dune that costs, $50 million in 1977. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand why things have to be commercial and have to fit in a nice box. And he hates people messing with art for commercial ends or for business ends. He hates all that. So he's almost you can tell he's putting into this Albino story his own frustrations with the world, his own frustrations with what he thought the world is with, compared to what it is, what it could be, and how he can change it, and all the friction he faces on his journey. And so if you're a Jodorowsky fan, you will see a lot of, it's almost like he wrote himself as a young boy going through all this in the eyes of this character. On the other side is Panifa, his mother. And so, once he leaves, she builds her ship, and she sets off to try to go kill these pirates. Well, right out of the gate, one of the pirates ends up. I need to be careful because we get into spoiler territory if I get too long. But right out of the gate, one of the pirates who raped her ends up taking over the ship and holding her as her and her 2 kids as slave. I'm sorry, her and her son as a slave. The other kid ends up being sort of released from that for various reasons. So she ends up, as she goes through the story, she does end up encountering each of the 3 pirates again, but they are in very different places than they were when they, as a group attacked and raped her. One has a complete change of heart when it comes to her. Another one has become some kind of weird godhead in this planet and has completely lost his mind and went insane. So she realizes that her revenge isn't as sweet as she thought it would be, because it's literally not the same 3 guys who raped and pillaged her the first time. They've all changed in different ways. And so they've evolved in different ways. So it's not just this clean revenge that she had hoped for. And as she goes on, she learns a lot. Her kids learn a lot. They evolve quite a bit. As a character study, it's really freaking great. Just the whole book could have just been Panifa's story or Albino's story. the fact that he was able to straddle both of them and make them sort of mirror each other in this really cool way, and then have them, tie back together at the end is just really cool. So the story, I mean, like
now, do they tie together like within one single chapter, or is it sort of jumping from one story to another as in different chapters?
So it's linear. So every volume of the 8 volumes, every volume picks up exactly where the last one left off. And, so there's the 2 main stories, and then there's sort of the meta story of Albino, old Albino narrating all this. And every once in a while, it'll show sort of, present day, the old Albino who's narrating it shows what he's going through. Because he's still trying to take these new Technopriests to like a new universe. So what does that journey look like? What do they encounter as they go on? But it always kind of comes back to him back in his sort of study, telling the story as they're traveling, and telling the story of himself and his mother. And so at the very end, they do reach their destination, and there's sort of a nice sort of, very nice coda. In fact, the very last page, I'm not even joking, the very last page, I'm looking at it right now, is everybody's back together, and they've reached their new place. And he literally says, "This is where our journey ends. The promised galaxy. At last, we have found a society where healthy human relationships are valued more highly than technological advances corrupted by an excess of science and a total lack of consciousness." The end. Like, that's literally, I just laughed because I'm like, of course, because they say that so many times. It's like, what are you doing? Well, we're going to a universe where ... Like, they repeat that so often. So and they even have like these shit-eating grins on their faces as they're saying it. I'm like, God damn it. So it was kind of funny that he threaded that through. But the 8 volumes, like it very much is a binge-worthy book. I read it for the first time 2 years ago, so at the beginning of 2017, and I couldn't put it down. Like I kept buying. I bought it off of Comixology, so I read it digitally.
So were you reading them separately, like buying one volume and then buying the next?
Yeah, and I should have bought the whole series because man, it's not like I don't even know what I can compare it to. It is meant to be read start to finish, right? It's like you don't watch Game of Thrones season 1 and say that's enough. Like, you got to keep going. It's very much like that.
That answers the question I was about to say, is that it's not like inclusive. Like, you can't just read one and go, got it, that tied up some loose ends.
No, okay. You got to keep going. No. And I was going to sort of spread it out. I ended up reading it all in an afternoon because I'm like, it was so good. And you just kept wanting to know what happened to these people. So because they kept raising the stakes as you go.
Do you have any insight on why it took so long to create? Do you get the feeling that it was mapped out and it was just sort of coordinating schedules over? I mean, it's 8 years of public.
Yeah. The way I understand, the way Jodorowsky creates, I don't think he maps anything out. I think he just goes. Like, the guy probably just dictated this entire thing. But it's a great question because it transitions us into discussing the art. The art is so vivid and rich. I think that's where the delay happened. Gotcha. The scenes, like just the panels alone, each of those is like, it's very detailed and very layered. And then the color, like I said, the colors is the starring character because it's so, I haven't seen color in a comic this vivid and this, like the shade and the shadowing and the light. It's very, there's kind of an uncanny valley thing going on a little bit. If you even look at the covers, you'll get a sense of that. It's just like they're almost hyper realistic in an alarming way. Your brain adapts to it as you go, but if you're not used to it right out of the gate, it's almost like, oh, should I be reading this? Like, what is this? Like, it's got kind of an otherworldly feeling to it. So I'm imagining that's a bulk of the time is just getting those two guys, the artist Zoran. I'll just call him Zoran J because I don't want to butcher his last name. And then Fred Beltran, just their work is impeccable here.
Yeah.
And it's probably, this was probably created alongside many other things that Jodorowsky was working on. So it could have easily taken him a little longer too, but I'm guessing it's the art.
And that would make sense. I think, that's a safe assumption with Jodorowsky also being such a multimedia creator.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Let's just pause for a second. If you're not familiar, Jodorowsky started off as a poet in Chile, and then later in Mexico and France. So he was a poet first and foremost. Then he did plays. He did a lot of theater, a lot of plays. Then he transitioned to film and movies. while he was doing film and movies, and largely off of the failure / pivot of the Dune movie, he became a prolific comics creator, and worked with Moebius, worked with some of the best artists around, and has created quite a bit, to the point where I would almost say he's done more in comics than probably any other art form. He's just an amazing mind, an amazing creative mind. I will say, if you are used to reading Marvel and DC stuff, and while this calls safe books, where and not safe in that they're not intellectually stimulating, but safe in that, like, what you're going to get. Hey, there's this hero that they're written this way with these like if you're used to that, this is going to be kind of a different animal for you. It's going to be a very different flavor, and one that will really stretch your palate, but in a really good way. So just anytime you see Jodorowsky on a book title, know that you're going to get something amazing, but something that you have never eaten before mentally. Like, this is going to be a totally new, it's going to kind of change up what you think about comics and graphic novels. Otherwise, the only other thing I'll mention is this is obviously a beautiful book in hardcover, but I would really, if you have an iPad or if you have a sizable tablet device, grab this digitally. Because the light, the backlight really makes these colors. I hate to say the word pop, but it's what it is. These colors really are vibrant with that backlight, and this is a story you want to consume panel by panel. I think there's so much visually going on that if you had to see everything on pages as you flip through, it would be almost too much. Like, you really want to focus in on the panels and the story, and it's told very cinematically. So the panel the panel view or the guided panel view really lends itself to that.
Yeah, very cool. That's funny because I wouldn't think of, I still think of all digital books as being hyper modern, and there's almost something like retro futuristic about Jodorowsky.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's like, I almost picture him in the 80s writing about cyberpunk, but not actually like in the moment of cyberpunk. But I guess he is, just as current, like the publication dates 98 through 2006, this is modern era stuff. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm just flipping through the pages again. I mean, there are some panels that you almost want to have as just prints on your wall. Like, they're just scenery. Like, there's one of a gigantic rooster in a police outfit on a planet. And that is a building where they distribute games. And like, you flip the page, or you swipe the panel, and you're like, what the hell? And it's just like that. The visual of it is so, you're just like, what is this? What am I looking at? It's just like, that's just something Jodorowsky just came up with. And the artist just rendered in a way that was so very specific to the story. One more thing I do want to mention, if you've read the Inkle or the Metabarons, the Technopriests characters do appear in both of those books. Oh. So the first time we would have learned about the Technopriests would have been in the Inkle. They play a pretty substantial role. You just don't know anything about why they are the way they are. They're sort of they're very antagonistic. They're kind of the villains of the Inkle, but you don't really know much more about like their importance of the universe or how they're organized. So this series is this delves into that, and much the same way the Metabarons delves into there's the character of the Metabaron in the Inkle. Jodorowsky got an entire series out of that. Same thing. He takes those Technopriests and really shows you why they are the way they are. And then expands on the universe even more. So it's every time I read something from the Jodoverse, I'm just like, God, I can't believe he's pulling this off. Like, it all fits together, but each of these stories is very self-contained. But just the universe that he has imagined is just so unlike anything I've ever experienced or expected.
It feels like, too, that from the way you've described it, and this is just such a weird subjective takeaway, is that it's almost like he's describing an interior universe and not like an exterior fantasy sci-fi world, but like, these are worlds that are, I don't know why I feel that way. Like that's my own subjectivity coming to it. Thinking, well, wait,
when you say interior, like, explain that more. Like,
I feel like these worlds exist only in his head. Like, it's like all, like, not that it's all metaphor, but it's, it's some way he's explaining everything to himself.
There, you know what? That's an astute, and you haven't read any of these. So
No.
I think observation.
It comes from you saying that, like, you can see some of his own struggles with art and commerce in this. You know, it makes me think like, oh, how crazy. You know, just from some of the other things you've described to me. And I don't know that we've done that on the podcast because, like you point out, I know we've talked about Mobius and stuff, but I don't know what other Jodorowskys you've covered in detail.
I don't think I have. I think this will be the first of a few. Like, I really want to get to the Meta Barons. I really want to get to the Inkle. Inkle's going to take.
I want to say we talked about Inkle.
We did, but we didn't review. I didn't review it. We did. I mean, we talked about it. Sort of. We referenced it for some other book, I think, that we were talking about. But this is it. The Inkle deserves, and then all the Mobius. Like, there's so much of that slice of things that I want to get into. But yeah, this is, if you're interested, I would say, if you like the other Jodorowsky stuff, obviously pick this up. If you want just something totally fresh and totally different that you would not ever think to pick up, grab this book, because it's gonna be something you just visually love to take in. But the story is amazing. It's gonna make you think. And it's just going to be one of those books you kind of come back to every year and you want to re-binge. Like, I've re-binged this now 3 times, and it feels re-binge. And I have, it feels just as fresh every time, because you'll see stuff you didn't see before, or you'll be in a different place mentally than the last time. So it's really good. I mean, and on Comixology, you can at least pick up, the first volume. And if you're just like, this is not for me, then no harm, no foul. But I would be surprised if you didn't go through all the rest of them.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad we're finally getting some Yodo-verse in the panelism verse.
Yes. Yes. Yodo in the panel. That was a terrible thing to say.
I won't try to top it. And until people pick this title up, where could they find more panelism if they wanted to hear your thoughts on Jodorowsky?
Well, you can subscribe to us wherever podcasts are found. Pocket Cast is my favorite app, but you can also find us on Google Play and Apple Podcasts, and I guess it's Google Podcasts now.
We're still on Google Play, but both places.
Both places, everywhere but Spotify. So Stitcher, and anywhere but Spotify. And then if you want to just follow along and get our point of view on a day-to-day basis, we have a pretty fun Instagram account. You can find that at panelism.inc on Instagram. That's panelism.inc. And our website address is also www.panelism.inc. That's INK. So find us there too. Subscribe and share with your friends. And we've been getting a lot of great feedback from Instagram. So if you like the show, let us know if you have suggestions for books or other things you want to see. We've got some suggestions that have come in that we're planning shows around now. So I can't wait to get to those. And just follow us there and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast.
Yeah, we're definitely active on Instagram, and that's the best place to reach out to us.
Definitely. Well, it's been fun reviewing this book. I hope you grab it. And Todd, I'll talk to you on the next episode.